Hello, Fermented folks.
We have P. Jelly Clark.
All Makatsu.
We have Travis Baldry.
Today we have a really special guest, Leopoldo Gout.
Are you reeling it in and defending clowns?
I am. Earth doesn't even exist in Battlestar Galactica.
This show me heartburn. I was like, I loves it, I hate it.
It's called All Fluff.
Oh!
If you didn't know how I actually feel about The Mandalorian,
Don't worry,
this is it right here.
Hello, Fermented folks, and welcome to another episode of Fermented Fiction. Spotify users might not be able to tell I am not Clayton because we have a very similar voice. But anyone who's watching on YouTube knows this face is not Clayton. I'm Travis, your usual backup person, but I'm hosting today, and we have an amazing guest, Pacific Northwest filmmaker, director. I think you've done all the jobs on a film set, right? Matt Rush.
Yes, all the jobs on a film set.
All the jobs on the film set. And joining us also is a guest star, our pinch hitter for the Fermented Fiction team, the man behind all of the shorts, who's gotten us so many views, and we thank him for it. Zeb Boos, my friend from Meathead Media. And then Jeremy, you're just, always here. So
yeah, I'm just still here.
You're just still here.
I'm gonna start early disagreeing with you, Travis. I would say that you and Clay are way more visually mistakable than you are vocally.
You think so, really? Because I always get told that we sound the same, but
Nah,
I think you
Clay's
sound
on those.
similar, but it's I actually agree with Jeremy.
all right. Well, I've been lied to my whole life. This is great. Great to start. All right. Well, we will start the usual way we do with roundtable introductions. And because you're our pinch hitter, we're going to give you the first spot, Mr. Boos.
Oh, rock and
What's
roll.
going on in your life? How you doing?
I'm above ground, baby, which is the Midwest equivalent of saying, kill me, I'm dying. Life is good. People may or may not know if they have seen me pinch hit before, but I'm wrapping up my doctoral thesis in exercise science. So I am in deep water and learning how to swim. But in betwixt that, since I've pinch hit last time, one of the perks of grad school is sometimes they pay you to go to conferences, and sometimes those conferences are in Eastern Europe. And sometimes you get to go to places like Prague and Vienna for said conferences. So stuff like that is what's keeping me floating and above board. So
Nice.
I'm good.
How was the Eastern Europe?
Oh man, so cool. If you ever have the chance, go to Prague. Some of the best beer you'll ever drink in your life, which is pertinent for this particular debate.
All right.
Yes.
Jeremy, what's
Hey.
going on in your life?
Well, hey, it's not as exciting as Prague, but I'm upset, and I'm going to tell everybody why.
Okay.
So what it is I recently went, to an eye doctor, get checkup, get some prescription sunglasses, all that good shit. And when I had my sunglasses on, when I had my glasses on, I was told that my vision is better than 20/20, which I was always told was perfect vision. But no, you can just be perfecter, I guess.
Yeah, like 10
Pissing me off. I'm like
You can be
2015 with
perfecter.
the glasses.
Mm.
Some
Well,
bullshit.
that's
I'm
performance enhancing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's- That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, you got the
basically a
steroids
cyborg.
of glasses. You're basically a cyborg.
Yes.
Which means you probably would have made it a little further than some of these other kids in Fantasticland. But we'll talk about that. Matt, can you let me do myself here first. I don't have a ton of updates. I also, like my brother, come up with these on the fly, except that school's out tomorrow. It is my last day of the year. 2025-2026 school year is ending. So I got the summer ahead of me, week on, week off. I will be on the farm, and then I will get week-long breaks in between to hang out with my wife and backpack and go to Pittsburgh for StokerCon. You'll see Jeremy there and Clayton. Yeah, I'm just excited to be done with the school year and looking forward already to the next one. I like my job, so I'm not one of those teachers that's like, kill me. I enjoy what I do, and I look forward to the next year. But all right, enough from us. Mr. Rush, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, my name is Matthew Rush. I'm a filmmaker in Seattle, Washington. For my day job, I work on set doing lighting, which is cool. There's a movie that I worked on that comes out tomorrow called Passenger.
Oh, you worked on Passenger?
Yeah, I worked on Passenger,
awesome.
and then I also make my own weird horror and sci-fi stuff. I made a short called Chicken Boy that kind of unfortunately clawed its way across the continental United States and
awesome.
Canada in a very successful festival run. I'm just starting a new festival run on a new short film called Embrace. If you're a fan of tentacles, please check out Embrace if it comes up in a festival near you. And yeah, I think I'm gonna agree with Zeb and say personally, I'm above ground.
You're above ground. All right.
Stay strong, brother.
Which again, you too. is more than a lot of the kids at Fantasticland can say, which we will again.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep teasing it though. You know, we got to talk.
I mean, you say kids.
Well, I'm not sure they're burying any of them.
The book says kids.
Just
kind of just left them or hung them up on the string.
Yeah.
The book says kids, so I assumed it was like children, and then I was like, oh no, these are like 20-year-olds, like college kids. But
yeah, I thought they were like late teen to early college was what
that's the impression I got.
They said in the book mostly 18 to 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I mean,
one or two.
I mean, like, to me, we're going to talk about extended adolescence. That might be part of my pretentious question of the week. But anyway, let's move on from there. The thing you guys all come for here, people who watch the show, is the debate. Okay, we bring people on so that we can fight them, because that's how we vibe. And today we have two great debaters that are going to be talking about Fantasticland. But before we get into that, Fantasticland, a little summary. We've been dancing around the subject of dying kids or dying teens or dying college kids. Fantasticland is a fictional epistle. How do you say that word?
Epistolary.
Thank you. Epistolary horror novel in the same vein as World War Z, about a Florida theme park that is built a little too close to the ocean. It gets hit by a hurricane, cut off from civilization, and all of the park sort of managers who are college kids or high school kids get trapped there, and Lord of the Flies shenanigans ensues. You get these I think they call it the Battle of the Tribes, as the park is split into different factions, and they all start killing each other at Fantasticland. And that's pretty much the story. Am I missing anything, guys?
Not without giving it away.
You flipping got it, dude.
And it's not even letters technically; it's in interviews, which I found very, very cool. But we'll talk more about the format after we debate it. Representing the Fermented Fiction team is going to be Mr. Zebediah Boos, and our guest today, representing everybody else in the world. So heavy burden there for you, Matt. Is Matt Rush.
I feel it. I feel it on my shoulders, but I'm ready.
Now, they don't know what side they're debating. they just get to roll for it. So do you both have your D20s ready? Give it a roll. Let's see what the dice gods decide. That face doesn't sound great.
I love
Zeb,
everything I'm seeing right here.
Unless the dice gods have cursed us both, it's a non-zero sum chance that I crit fail.
What'd you get? You crit failed? Oh my word, Matt.
Oh boy.
I rolled a 6, which I was feeling rough about until about 2 seconds ago.
There you go. All right. So that means that Matt will be defending Fantasticland and starting the debate first. Zeb will be attacking Fantasticland and starting after Matt. It is a 10-minute timer for both of you. Please do not filibust and hog the whole time. You got to share that thing. But besides the sharing, all rules are out the window. Hits below the belt are encouraged. Are you two ready to debate?
Quite.
All right. Jeremy and I will remove ourselves, and the timer will begin in 10 minutes from the time that I go off camera. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, Fantasticland. What to say about this novel? Honestly, I will say, I think to me, it is one of the most effective audiobooks, which is how I consumed it. I think that the structure and the story are so well crafted. And I think it's more effective than Lord of the Flies because I think it gives more fundamental explanation for how these kids ended up in this situation. I think that all of the interviews are written so effectively for you to feel the different people involved, and it has this really amazing way of giving each character has their own recollection of what happened, and it shifts the nature of how things function. I just think it's such a powerful novel about human nature and about the lengths that we will go to survive, for better or worse. Even if we don't have a full understanding of what that survival means. And this kind of darkness that's innately cooked into some human beings where they will just take this excuse to become their worst self.
Interesting. Mr. Rush, it's a pleasure. I think you bring up a lot of great points. I'm so happy you brought up Lord of the Flies, because my biggest critique against Fantasticland is that this is a book that doesn't know what it is, and it really tries so hard to be a lot of different things. Here's my reasons. One, it's told in a series of interviews, but from the perspective of the author of the book inside of a book. The interviews, while good, and listen, I'll give you this one. The author does say in the prologue, hey, this is compiled and tweaked around certain questions. But I don't think any teenage kid talks in such beautifully descriptive prose like some of these sections were. I only have a little tiny bit of beef with the fact that it's multiple interviews, and that's if the author was trying to tell a deeper story about humanity, I feel like he could have totally just skipped the interviews and given us the summary and postulated on what he eventually postulated on anyway in the final chapter. And then lastly, my biggest beef with this whole thing is that if you tell me with a straight face a bunch of 18 to 20-year-olds are not having copious amounts of intercourse and that they immediately turn to violence, I don't believe you, and we may have had different college experiences.
I think, in response to that, what I would say is I think that there is a separation that is capable through a story like this that's told in a standard narrative format like Lord of the Flies is told. But I think that through each of these interviews and through this collective story, you're able to really zone in as a human being to processing what that experience would have been like without having the separation of kind of like a third person standard narrative format. And on that point, I think it also doesn't work without having the author, because I think you need for lack of a probably more effective literary term, you need an audience surrogate so that you're consuming this information as the interviewer. I mean, I can't defend the lack of sex other than to say, I don't think they had booze stocked in the survival rations at the park.
Fair. Okay. I think you bring up a good point. One that I'm not going to try to totally negate, but in addition to like me saying that I don't think this book knows what it was trying to be, my point that like I really come back to with that is they keep introducing these warthogs periodically. And I get the sense, at least from that one interview where the kid is hiding out in the hotel and he's like almost murdered by the warthogs. But then the rest of the book is more thriller. I was confused by what Mike Bocovan was trying to do. Like, was it horror because of human nature, and human nature and its worst is just killy, stab? Or is it thriller? And if it's thriller, why introduce these totally obscure, freaky warthog people that at the end, took off their masks and just rejoined society? That's where I thought to myself, I get it. It's feasible, but it kind of pulled me out of the story. I'm like, all right, wait a second. Are we trying to be scary, or like scary human nature, or scary killing?
I think what I love about the Warthog chapter, which I am a big fan of, I think what I love about the Warthog chapter is that it actually, what I love about the book in general is that it doesn't give you simple answers to hard questions. It leaves you with things to chew on. It leaves you with the ambiguity of human nature to try to wrestle with. And what I love about the Warthog chapter, and why I think the Warthog chapter is so important to the story as a whole, is that it separates. I feel like up to that point in the book, you are looking at the leader of the pirates and you're like, you're the devil. Like, you are a monster. And it kind of recenters in this way of being like, no, these are monsters. This is a child who needed to figure out how to survive. And he went into a primal state to try to do that, because they were worried about food reserves. And it kind of pulls you back to this ambiguity of being like, well, shit, now I've been faced with like real, true evil. So how do I reckon with this kid?
Yeah, sure. Okay. All well and good. All well and good. My next critique though is purely like logistics. I don't believe I had to like give this book kind of just like poetic justice or like liberty, because I don't believe that the first place they would have gone was, albeit familiar, I don't think they would have gone to their sections of the park first. I think way more of them would have tried to go to a hotel with beds. From like a reading standpoint, I'm like, okay, even at 18, I would have preferred a place that had a bed. Like, I wouldn't have tried to go to where I work. No.
I felt like there was, if I'm remembering the Warthog chapter correctly, the path to the hotels were flooded.
Correct.
Violently flooded. So I feel like, I think a lot of the situation that these kids are in, and a lot of the nature of, I think what makes the moral ambiguity of this book so interesting is the fact that it's this kind of thing of like, if you're naive enough that you don't know how the world works and you're faced with things that seem insurmountable, you're just going to go into survival mode. And I think this is such an apt portrayal of people without the life skills to know how to functionally survive going into survival mode and being like, okay, if the path is flooded, we can't get to the hotels because what if we fucking die? What's on the other side? Like, is the hotel flooded? What's happening? Because they've been left with nothing. They've been left with no like survival leader and like older presence that is able to like think with a clearer head and be like, okay, hold on, let's look at this from a rational perspective.
I'm glad you brought up the survivability because that was one of my other beefs, like another suspension of disbelief. And you're telling me that it just so happens that of the 16 or so shop girls that all were girls and all collectively grouped in this one spot, 4 of them were good enough with a bow to hit moving human targets from the roof of of a shop. Guy, listen, on a good day, most of my buddies in Montana couldn't hit moving targets with a bow. And I know that the book described the bows as like proper, compound bows with like actual tips, but I could not. I was like, no chance.
Look, the Hunger Games affected a lot of young women.
All right, that's a good line to end on. The Hunger Games affected a lot of young women. That is very true. That is very true.
For sure.
Yep, very true. All right, great debate, folks. Great debate. I absolutely love some of those points. We're going to talk about a lot of them. But before we do that, we have 2 segments. One of them will be a little shorter today because it's a book. Trivia is always hard to kind of drum up with a book, a lot easier to do with a movie. But before we do that, we be drinking on this show. And I want to know what people be drinking. So again, we're going to start with you. Zeb, what'd you bring?
Rock and roll, baby. I am currently battling a tiny head cold, so I got tried and true chamomile.
All right, chamomile tea.
Yeah,
good. It hits.
Fantastic.
It does
hit.
Jeremy,
hey,
what about you?
In honor of this book, I am drinking a dark and stormy, rum, ginger, all the good stuff.
I love that. Very thematic. Always bringing the good cocktails. Myself, I decided to try and be slightly thematic to myself, which is imagining a drink that would do to my taste buds what this storm did to these kids in this park. And I love whiskey, but I hate rye. So I got, which my wife says this is actually a good rye. We'll see. But I just think out of like bourbon, Irish, Scotch, all of it, like rye is maybe my least favorite. I think it's just too sweet.
That's the gateway rye for bourbon people.
All right, well, here we go. We'll see. It's okay. I don't hate it. So that's better than hate.
Okay is the first step to good.
That's true. What are you drinking, Matt?
I have a strict rule to really try to take care of myself and not drink alcohol for like the week after I've been to a film festival or like something like Crypticon.
It's a good rule. It's a good rule.
The plague's just ripping through those fucking things. So I'm rocking a Mountain Dew Baja Blast Zero.
Nice. How much Baja Blast do you think was consumed in Fantasticland?
That's a T-Bell exclusive. Normal Mountain Dew, sizable.
But not Baja Blast.
No.
Baja Blast.
Unless there's Taco Bell on the premises.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Well, I think if there was a Taco Bell on the premises, that's where those kids would have flocked.
That's where I would.
For sure. And they wouldn't have killed each other. They just would have.
They all would have died with their arteries clogging from liquid cheese.
Yeah. They would just get Baja
liquid shits.
They're all dying of dysentery when finally they come in.
That would be a very different book. Very different horror right there. All right. Well, there's a couple facts I found about this from really one interview on the website AIPT. I don't know what that stands for. I apologize to this. The interview is by Nick Nafpliotis, if anyone wants to look it up. He got some good nuggets of information from Mr. Bocovan, and I liked this one of he based the character of Glenn Gugnall, hopefully I said that right, off of Glenn Hetrick from the TV show Face Off, which was a monster movie makeup reality series. And apparently he actually never communicated that with anybody, but the narrator picked up on the like similarities between their personalities and just did a Glenn Hetrick impression when he played that character. So that's pretty cool. He said several characters, because he had to come up with so many, are ripped straight out of his life or straight out of pop culture. He did invent quite a few, or like combine a lot of traits from people he knew for some, but like others, he said like, yes, some of these people are just based on people I straight up worked with. He credits World War Z as being the biggest inspiration for it. He said he owes Max Brooks a steak if he ever meets him, and thinks that novel was incredibly important and influential for horror in general. Oh, and this is the last one that I'll say because the warthawks were mentioned in the debate. The interviewer asked him if it's a self-contained story or if the warthogs were hinting at a possible return to the Fantastic World land, and he said it's not off the table. So there's a possible other Fantasticland story that could be coming, centering around the psychopathic warthog killers. We shall see. That is your fermented facts, unless anybody else has any good ones that they know.
Yeah, I have one kind of fact that's kind of about this book, which is to say I felt compelled to look it up while I was reading. And that is the fact that Disney World, on its premises, has roughly 100 or so bars and restaurants and lounges that serve alcohol. Just want to throw that out there for the table, especially with what was mentioned in the debate. You know?
So you're saying these kids would be just shit-faced.
Look, I am saying, what I'm saying is that if you
At
leave
least at first.
hundreds of 18 to 25-year-olds unsupervised in an amusement park and expect me to believe that they aren't just throwing the biggest rager and having sex on every semi-solid surface on the premises, then you're crazy. You're a crazy person, and you need to go home and think about how you're sick in the head.
Oh man, that's a bold accusation, but I do think that they probably would be drinking more alcohol. That is interesting, though. I didn't think Disneyland, or is it World, you said, had that many restaurants.
I went for Disney World since that one's also in Florida.
I did like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't believe Disneyland in California has, I think they have like 5 restaurants and maybe one of them serves alcohol.
Yeah. We never went as a family. Never really had much of an interest in going. I don't know why, but
that's crazy.
I just asked my wife the other day, like, are we going to be the people that take our kids to Disneyland? And she was like, I don't know. She doesn't have an interest either. I guess if the kids ask. I was going to say, I loved that they included the underground tunnels because that's been there's so many like myths about the horrors of the underground tunnels at Disneyland and World for the workers and stuff.
When I am like crisis situation, underground tunnels, someone's definitely getting trampled to death.
Oh,
100%. For sure.
For sure. All right. Well, that is trivia, which means we're going to jump in to our true thoughts on the book. Apologies I mean, 30 minutes in, I got to say, I'm not as great of a host as Clayton. He's got the energy. Hopefully, I'm holding the show up here. Zebediah, you were against, which means you are our first one on bat for your true opinion. What did you actually think of Fantasticland? Were you lying?
I was lying through my teeth, or lack thereof. I thought this was a great book. I really enjoyed it. All my critiques were shallow at best. And I was really hoping I didn't have to debate against it. That being said, though, all my critiques do hold some water, but like, hey, I really enjoyed reading this. This was one of the first books that I've read for fun in a while, so it took me like 3 days. I was just powering through it. I could not get enough of the interviews. So, yeah, quite enjoyed it.
Love that, Matt. Were you lying through your teeth, or are you a fan of Fantasticland?
I believe the inception of this episode was that I love Fantasticland so much that I was like, Clay, you have to read this book. This book is fucking insane. And I really do. I've actually never read it on paper, but I have listened to it twice all the way through as an audiobook. It's the biggest argument I've ever seen for an audiobook, and it's done so well. I think so. They have, I believe, maybe it's only 2 people. So it's like the guy,
2 people.
Yeah, so the guy kind of falls into a little bit of standard audiobook narration situation, but she's so good. And you can like feel like when they're really both dialed in, you can really feel like the human emotion in both of them. I think it's a really great book.
Jeremy, you have thoughts.
I do have thoughts.
Here.
Now look, I'm gonna just come right out and say, well, the positives first. Hey, this is a great audiobook. I don't think anybody can really deny that. It's a super engaging thing, and there's like all this mystery surrounding that you just kind of want to get through. It feels really satisfying that there's when you find the edges where the different interviews kind of overlap, and like you get the sense that the guy cheering up the kid at the beginning is Brock Hockney, and then he goes on to be Brock Hockney, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, why not? That being said, this, I think the framing device of this book really just is at odds with so much of what happens in this book, because it sets at like a really super grounded, realistic tone to something, and then you get to like, it takes 4 days for these theme park employees to go from sheltering in place to being tribalistic, violent extremists. And then just at the end of the book, the author's like, well, who knows why it all happened? And I'm like, motherfucker, you're the author. You know why. You should know why it happened. Especially if you're framing this as journalism, that should be the whole point, is getting to the actual bottom of why it happened, so that people like me don't think that everyone went berserk because you told them to, you know? And then if it was just that would be plenty. But like, there was one part of the book specifically that broke me. It was like that guy from Fairy World, during his interview, was he wondered why there's an actual locking cage in the pirate land. I'm like, well, yeah, actually, why the fuck is that there? You don't need anything like that at a theme park. And then they have a cannon, like a working cannon from like the friggin' golden age of piracy, and you know, they've got cannonballs and powder to fire it off? Why? Why do you have that? And the book doesn't seem to care why, nor does it seem to care to explain why there's a sporting goods store at a theme park. It just says, yeah, they got all these knives and pads and hockey sticks and whatever from the sporting goods store. It's a theme park. No, you fucking didn't. You didn't. And like, it all feels like it's setting up to something. Like there's some kind of overarching evil corporate whatever may be going to happen. And then you get to the part where Richie Fresno is being interviewed. And at no point in the interview, it would seem, was he asked, why the hell can you buy real, actual swords at this park? Or why are there sporting goods stores? Or why was there a cannon? Or, like how does any of this actually happen? Never gets asked, never gets explained, never gets explored by anybody. And, like, I think if the way the story was being told didn't make it feel so grounded and realistic, then I wouldn't bat an eye at all the bananas ass shit that happens over the course of the story. But it just happens, and it expects me to just kind of buy that everyone went to war before even like trying to build a boat or an SOS or whatever. Like, none of that got even considered. So I don't know. This is an infuriating book for me personally.
All right, Matt, you're gonna have to back me up here because I'm about to go bananas.
Do it, Zach.
Right,
Do it.
I'm ready.
I'm gonna go bananas.
You're gonna go as bananas as these kids shooting bows at people.
Hey,
All right.
they shot those bows in self-defense.
In self-defense. it was never a hunting party from the shop girls.
Perfectly at moving targets with maybe zero training, but we don't talk about that.
Don't worry about it.
God, seriously. Okay, number one, the book skirts around like why there's all of these implements by just saying over and over again that the creators were suckers for realism. You can take that at face value, or you can keep questioning it. It sounds like you're still questioning it. That's fine. Like a locking cell, okay, a little far, but a working cannon is not that far out.
That's so much further out than the locking cell.
Because if you think about like all the attractions that have like actual puffs of smoke out of cannons, like there's a Pirates of the Caribbean exhibit that definitely has cannons that could theoretically be functional, and especially if like TNT already is, on the park grounds, I don't think it's that far off that there you could find black powder.
There's also the whole rumor that Pirates of the Caribbean have a like real dead body, but have you heard of that?
Well, there's
Matt, go ahead.
There's also the realistic thing that Disneyland does a literal fireworks show every night that they are open, which is every night, which means some section of that park that the employees would have access to is littered with explosives.
But look, if it wasn't a goes on and on about how like these kids aren't equipped to do anything, but they're equipped to repurpose the explosive components of fireworks into a functional operable cannon.
I don't think it's that crazy to think that in some sort of pirate show that they had, that they would fire the cannon into the water. I don't think it's that crazy to assume that, like a low impact cannon into the water.
Yeah.
I can also tell you right now, I have 3 8th grade boys in the classes I teach, and these, that's 5 years younger than most of these people. I don't think they're capable of doing these kinds of pyrotechnician stuff, but leave them alone and tell them that they're going to die if they don't figure it out. I think those three boys would figure it the hell
out. I'm not saying that it can't be figured out. What I am saying is that you pile all that on top of everything else. Oh, and by the way, like, I know you just said it, and the book also said, like, it was super weird, I thought, when somebody was like, oh, they've only been out of some of them have only been out of middle school for 5 years. Like, that's not a way anybody says anything. I checked. Okay, they're just adults. They're just fully adults. It's just what it is. But anyway, it's layer upon layer upon layer of things of like, well, why would that actually happen? And without providing some context as for like the first domino, why is this second domino even bothering to fall, you know?
The first domino was the kid getting his head bashed in. That's and the interviewer author, like, that was his theory at the end of the epilogue too. Like, he does kind of say, like, hey, if there was a flashpoint, it was that kid getting his fucking head smashed in.
Yeah.
He brings that up, and some of the kids in the interviews bring that up too. I was like, that was the first domino.
That was the first domino, but like this guy was just scaling multiple buildings in a rainstorm, being like, I'm Batman, and that he can just do that?
Well, he didn't deserve to die. I'm not
saying he deserved to die. I'm wondering how he got to the tops of these high places to even fall to his death in the middle of a hurricane.
Oh, go ahead, Grant.
It's so easy. All of those buildings have there is emergency access up to the roof. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to get onto the roof of these buildings.
Just scaling the facade. I mean, for like the shops of, like, if you think of like a Western like saloon type shop, you could scale that facade.
Yeah. I want to interject a little bit into this extended debate, which I'm loving, by the way, to say two things that I actually really love about the Fantasticland. How, like, obviously this is going to draw Lord of the Flies comparisons, but I think Mike Bocovan does two things that I actually enjoy a lot more than Lord of the Flies. And one is, from the get-go, he doesn't try and do the like Thomas Hobbes philosophy thing where he's just like, yeah, human nature sucks. Like, we're all evil pieces of crap, and like the shit's gonna hit the fan and we're all gonna just turn into monsters. I don't think Bocovan does that. I think in a couple of the first interviews where you get this like, what would you do? Hey, this is like, a lot of this is a lot more gray. And like, I forget the the like foreman. He's kind of one of the managers. He's like the fourth interview. I forget his name.
Sam Gerliak.
Yeah. I love that he has the sort of quote that's basically like, for as much terror that happened, like, you can find stories of good. Like, there was a lot of people doing heroic things and helping people out when the storm first hit and getting them out in the buses. And so I like that Bocovan does that. He doesn't just run right into the Thomas Hobbes nature is shit theory. And I like that you mentioned the killing is the catalyst, because I always had a problem with that, as like, it almost reverses the timeline of Lord of the Flies, where like the like culmination of the bad behavior in William Golding's novel is the death of Piggy. Whereas in this, the like first death of an innocent is what sparks further violence rather than like what is led to. I like that more philosophically, of like, we won't snap until we see that kind of thing happen. And then there's like a moment that changes our psyche, rather than, yeah, we're just all going to build up to that eventually. Like, I think different things.
I'm glad you brought that up, because like, if anybody wants to like challenge that specific flashpoint of like, well, why would that cause people to then start killing each other instead of like pooling their resources? I need only direct you to the entirety of the Cold War, where there was no need. We never we never needed to like keep stacking up nuclear bombs, but we did because the other guy was doing it. Like, I think it's totally within the realm of reason that these kids were like, okay, if we don't get bows and arrows and start absolutely whacking people, they're gonna whack us.
Well, and
Let's all get bows and arrows. Like, those are just supposed to be here.
well, and
They were
I
there
think
because of the fairies or whatever.
Matt, jump in there.
I think that it's also a thing about we've all had that experience when we were like 18 to early 20s and you feel invincible, and then there is some sort of catalyst event that just like really brings home like, oh, we're all going to die one day. Like, life is not, we're not immortal creatures. Like, and I think to see that, to have a bunch of young people see that in already an emergency situation where they're kind of lost and they don't really know what to do, I think it makes perfect sense that they would be like, oh, fuck, we have to do everything we can to survive.
Yeah, because like death is a real thing now. And I think that is like crisis situations. I think you're 100% right, Matt, that like in the teenage years, you probably feel, I'm trying to like, you know, you're out in the woods, you're doing all this stuff. And like the first time you get hurt, you have like, or even I can think of, we just had a fighter. We have one of our fighters from our MMA gym that is insanely talented and a really good boxer. And he's had 2 MMA fights, and his first one he won, but he got clocked hard. Like the guy broke his knuckle on our guy's face. So then his next fight, you can markedly see him hesitate to like enter the fray with the boxing. And it's like, cause he's had that physical experience of getting a right hook to the jaw that almost knocked him out cold. And now obviously his like body is like, don't go there again. So I think you're right that like death thing is true.
I would like to bring up a separate point that I just looked up. Universal City Walk, which is attached to Universal Studios in both Los Angeles and Florida, have sporting goods stores in them.
Oh, no way.
Man, I've been to Universal too, and I'm like, I didn't go and look for this.
Well, why would you ever go to it? But they do have them. It's because they're branded. They're like NBA and shit. It's like branded merch, but they are full sporting goods stores.
How full are we talking though?
I don't know.
Sports themed souvenir shop.
I don't know. When I went to Universal, Jeremy, I gotta check out the sporting goods store. I went to Harry Potter Land, man.
Yeah,
I went to Harry Potter Land.
Got to find out about Hagrid's journey.
I would be testing so many spells.
I don't think that the sporting goods store for me was that big of a suspension of disbelief. And I don't, if I remember correctly, the swords that the pirates got, they did not get from a store. I think they were like in pirate land.
Sure. There were also swords for sale in some of the various stores.
Why?
For the children.
That's theme park realism, Jeremy.
Theme park realism.
They want you to feel immersed.
Yeah.
You know what did end up
I
being
bought
like
a wand.
Okay.
Cool. That's a dangerous weapon.
That's a weapon, man. Full size. Yeah, I have the Elder Wand in my house. Don't fight
damn,
me.
bro.
That's
the
crazy.
boys flexing now.
That's flexing.
The thing that well and truly just broke all of my suspension of disbelief was the disaster plan the theme park had in place, which is a terrible idea. It's a terrible plan that there is no way any legal department or human resources would ever approve. just simply because it is so much cheaper for the park to replace anything that's damaged by a hurricane with its own insurance. Like, there is no reason to even have all these people there. It's crazy. It's crazy town the whole time.
I mean, yes,
Or,
and no.
again,
Like,
no reason.
they try to explain it in the book, and like, one of the reasons why things went sideways so fast wasn't that they were in that communal bunker, right? When shit went sideways in the communal bunker, it was when the satcom and like all the like external connection computers went down, and like that could be like a theoretical, like, yeah, the lawyers would approve, yeah, you're hanging out with like a satellite phone. Wow. Just a couple kids.
You know what the lawyers would approve of way easier? Nobody being there at all. You just skip the bunkers, send everybody home if there's a natural disaster.
Listen, we just talked about Jurassic Park. It's the same situation.
Yeah.
You know what the lawyers would actually love? People not being 10 feet from a T-Rex.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what
or even like worse so, like, I don't think the lawyers had ever conceived of Hurricane Sandy, which I think was a pretty cool like tie-in to real world events that they brought in actual like some of those figures that they were pulling out, like 175 mile an hour winds, 30 miles inland. Like nobody expected that.
Well, sure, but like we already had at that point a different hurricane that shattered everybody's expectations of what should happen when a hurricane hits, and that was Hurricane Katrina years and years ago. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not unheard of for a storm to be like
way worse,
a lot worse than other storms. Like, we already know that can happen.
Thanks a lot, Al Gore.
Did anyone as a kid, other than me, watch and like have way too high of anxiety over the show It Could Happen Tomorrow?
No, I never saw that.
Oh man, it was either on the Weather Channel or Discovery. And it was just like all these like awful natural disasters, and the whole show's premise was like it could happen tomorrow, and they all would like kill everybody. So
this is what living in Seattle is like, because every time I drive over any bridge, I'm like, what if today is the day that like the Great Quake hits and we like
we're just gone,
and the fault line splits and my whole city just shears into the ocean.
Yeah, I tell my students all the time, we live next to Yellowstone, and I'm always like, you won't feel anything, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
like
over that fast. That's what I'm like. If I was right on a volcano, I would feel way less bad, but my situation is drowning to like 100-foot wall of water.
Yeah, or surviving and having a Fantasticland situation
if it makes you feel better, the 100-foot wall of water would probably crush you to death before you would drown.
Matt,
Perfect.
Do you know where your nearest sporting goods store is?
You bet I do. I actually do know where my nearest sporting goods store is. It's bad, but I know where it is.
That'll do it.
Yeah. And I am poorly, but to some extent, bow trained. So,
hey,
when shit hits the fan, you might become a pro. We don't know.
That's
true. You're a step ahead of the shop girls.
Yeah.
Right?
The last thing I do want to one final opinion before we go to 5-minute break. And I didn't want this to be a question, but more of just like an open talk of. My opinion on this novel is very mixed because I think it's incredibly entertaining and the story is like fast-paced, fascinating, and well done. And like I said, I think it does a couple things better than Lord of the Flies did. I love the epistolary form of the interviews, but the like general philosophy behind both this and Lord of the Flies, I just kind of hate. And there's actually, interestingly enough, been an experiment that was done. You can find an article of it in The Guardian. This guy named, what was his name? I have it right here. Muzavar Sheriff took a bunch of boys to a camp in Middle Grove and like tried to force them to do a Lord of the Flies thing. Like, well, at first he was like, I'm just going to leave him alone and it's going to happen. And it didn't. So he brought in counselors to like instigate violence. And I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs for you. In 50s Middle Grove, things didn't go according to plan either. Despite his pretense of leaving the 11-year-olds of their own device, him and his research staff, posing as camp counselors, interfered to engineer the result they wanted. He believed he could make the 2 groups called the Pythons and Panthers sworn enemies via a series of well-timed frustration exercises. These included his assistants stealing items of clothing from the boys' tents, cutting rope that held up the Panthers' homemade flag in the hope they would blame the Pythons. One of the researchers crushed the Panthers' tent, flung their suitcases into the bushes, and broke a boy's beloved ukulele. After losing a tug-of-war, the Pythons declared that the Panthers were in fact the better team and deserved to win. The boys concluded that the missing clothes were the result of a mix-up of laundry, and after each of the Pythons swore on a Bible that they didn't cut down the Panthers' flag, any conflict frizzled. By the time the incident of the suitcases and the ukulele, the boys had worked out that they were being manipulated, and instead of turning on each other, helped put the tent back up and eyed their camp counselors with suspicion. So, like, instead of Lord of the Fliesing, they all just were like, I think these adults are fucking with us, and like banded together. So I have like a problem kind of with this like underlying idea that children would just turn to animals if given the opportunity. I don't know if I believe it quite fully. So what do you guys think?
I mean, like, I know adults that would do that, but kids, no.
Yeah. So I'm actually really deeply anti Lord of the Flies. I really dislike that book specifically because of the philosophy. I remember reading it in high school and being like, oh, this is bullshit written by a mean-spirited old man who fucking hates kids. Like, and it just never read realistic to me. And I think overarchingly, I agree with your philosophy. I think that this book reads different to me because this book seats you into the world so much. And I think establishes the building blocks of 1,000 different small things that were like unknowingly set up to go wrong that would like create this environment. And I don't think the book is ever like, maybe with the exception of the warthogs, I don't think that this book is ever like, and maybe Brock Hockney is ever like, these kids are monsters. It's like these kids were put in an impossible situation without the knowledge that they needed to not, like, I think that there's a really fascinating passage in the book where they're talking about like, the problem is actually that they had more than enough food and each area had enough food. So they were looking at all of this food and they were like, this has to be all of the food.
Mm-hmm.
So then it just built them into this environment to be like, well, I can't, like, we need this to survive. And like, I think this book does a far better job than Lord of the Flies of like handling this subject matter in like a humanistic way that does not believe that these kids are monsters in their core.
Mm-hmm. I think you had a really good point too in your debate about the leadership thing, because I think that's I've read other things. I couldn't find them on the fly, but a couple other studies have been done where they found like the biggest factor for people kind of devolving into this base violence are the presence of either the non-presence of a leader and the presence of an instigator. So like if you have a group of people that are all just kind of like trying to work together, you can completely tear them apart by like introducing one person who starts to see like, hey, that guy wants your shit, and like whisper and all that. or you can completely like solve most problems if you get like one strong leader voice who comes in and is like, here's what we're doing, here's the plan, let's go. I think I like that you mentioned that of like, these are kids without that adult presence and with like several different instigators that are like, they want our shit. Like, we have to protect it. And so the ones that are more impressionable are like, well, yeah, that guy seems like he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But any Jeremy, what are your remaining thoughts before we go on our 5-minute break here?
My remaining thoughts, there aren't too many. I do think that like, even with all of that having happened, I think what happened with the freaks is probably the most likely thing to happen, was just everybody gets really high and does art and doesn't mess with anybody else. Like, if they're going to split off into factions, that's what's going to happen. Although I don't know how they were powering their speakers. Didn't care to mention. That's fine. I think, we've kind of said it. I do find it super weird how throughout the book, like, everyone keeps referring to the employees that were trapped as kids. Even the people who like are in that age group, who, as a person who was 18 to 25 at one point, if you can believe it, they're not going to refer to themselves as kids. They're just not going to.
I mean, even 14-year-olds don't like.
Yeah, even 14-year-olds, they're like, we're young adults. So like, yes, you're so young that you are actually still children.
No, they just say I'm an adult, which always reminds me of Joffrey Baratheon saying, I am the king. Like, if you have to say it, you aren't.
I would say that the counter argument I would make to that is the only time that I've seen a teenager refer to themselves as a kid is when they are in trouble, or they feel like they're going to get in trouble, and they're like, how do I remove my autonomy so that I'm less responsible?
I'm just a kid.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Then my only other thought is just about the masked serial killers, the warthogs, who just show up and do fuck all and nothing happens with them.
Nothing?
They do basically, they scare a guy in a hotel and then stalk him across the country as if that's not its own entire story.
They murdered 5 people that they could like count.
Okay, cool.
I also thought it was cool.
They didn't do that.
They get referred to. Nothing happens with them for most of anybody's stories. It's not part of the climax. It's not part of the point of the book. Maybe other than this, like, oh yes, why would this have happened? I'm like, I don't know why. You have to tell me that still. And then they don't.
I think it just added a layer of horror to an already scary situation.
Okay.
I also think that is maybe the element of the apocalypse that scares me the most, is like, there is a small, hopefully small subset of people out there who would be like, I was born for this. Like,
yep.
Yeah, I guess. But like,
rampage.
With everything else that's already happening, even including that's like having, Friday the 13th, except Jason has his dick out. Like, he was plenty scary already. You didn't need that. That's different.
I genuinely feel more concerned about the knife than the dick. That would be the least.
I'm concerned that it's both.
I would like to go back through our season 4 backlog and see how many episodes Jeremy references hog.
I'm really happy to know that this is not a one-off occurrence.
This is not a one-off.
We have hog representation in the house. I appreciate that.
Yeah, much hog.
Here on this show, we're not afraid of the hog. We acknowledge it. It's there. It's a part of life.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Jason's hog, that's not a segue. I just wanted to say it one more time.
I can get behind
I'm going to take us into a 5-minute break because I'm sure there's hogs. We have to empty our bladders. So my little 5-minute break thing is not going to be the same as my brother's because I don't know where he put the 5-minute break file. So you're going to get a share screen. We're all going to turn off our cameras and we'll be back, folks. Stick around and watch us talk about this book more. See you in 5. All right. We'll give our guests a second to come back, but like, comment, subscribe. That's one thing you should do. Also, head over to Substack, Meathead Media. You can read articles written by Zeb and I. We do movie reviews. We just started a new movie review series called the Aristotelian Sniff Test, where I use Aristotle's framework from Poetics to decide if I think things are good or not. And the first one's going to be Mortal Kombat 2. Hint, I hated it. So
I've been hearing that.
I heard the opposite, man. I heard that it was like so good and a great action film. It was terrible.
I don't know. The only thing I've heard is that you hated it. So
Yeah, I was not.
That's the entire internet. My whole sphere has been talking about that you didn't like it. Actually,
yeah,
Oh,
they were not happy.
No, everyone I know has rated it like 2 stars or under on Letterboxd, and is like, "This is dog shit." Which, judging by the first Mortal Kombat that I watched on HBO Max in the pandemic, unsurprised because that movie is unwatchable.
Yeah, it is not
True.
good.
Mortal
But-
Kombat, about what we're expecting.
You know, they got material there, though. I wish they would just use some of it a little more efficiently. But hey, we're not talking about Mortal Kombat. Right now, we're talking about Fantasticland. And I want to kick off our open panel with which question do I want to go to? You guys brought up quite a few good ones. I'm going to
Fun one if I kick it off on a fun one.
go ahead, Zeb. Let's kick it off on
Do
you.
it.
All right. Theoretically, if you were in this situation, what would you have done? And if you choose violence, which group would you have sided with?
Ooh, let's start with you, Matt.
I would have hidden in the best spot I possibly could have found, and probably would have gotten murdered. I think realistically, I probably would have ended up in the scary land with all the people smoking weed and waiting for this whole thing to blow over.
I like
Fantastic.
I like that. Zeb, you asked the question. Which group are you associating yourself with?
Not because I'm a fan of violence, but I'm a fan of living. I probably would have joined the pirates as soon as I got the chance. I could do just a little bit of murder for food.
That's a treat.
Yeah, just
you know.
just the tiniest amount, and then it's just fight clubs and parties till your heart's content.
If you put me in a fight club, I am dog walking the person across from me to live. I do not care.
I'm gonna jump off that because also pirates, but that's just because ask my brother. Every movie we ever watched, TV show, anything that was like medieval based, I always played the barbarian, and I am very short, so it doesn't quite fit because the barbarian's always like a huge 6 foot tall guy. But you know, I have the heart of a barbarian in the very short body of I'm like a dwarf in fantasy books.
It's true. I've wrestled Travis.
Like violence.
Exactly.
I keep it tempered. I do it as a sport. But I think if my base nature were to come out, I hope it wouldn't. But if it did, I'd be with the group that was doing the most violence.
Survey says, Travis, it would take about 4 days.
Okay.
Yeah. 4 days, and then
4
it's
days,
violence.
and then
Okay.
it's Travis just becomes the violence within him. Jeremy, what about you?
Hey guys. So first plan of action is to avoid the groups altogether. Don't like them. Way too people-y. I don't care for it. Now, I think there's plenty of park to go unnoticed, but going unnoticed is not going to help the situation. No, what I'm going to do, start a fire, like a big one. Get people are looking for reasons from the disaster relief organizations are looking for reasons to not go there. But if you give them a big smoking reason to go there, they're going to go there and you're going to be rescued before somebody shoots an exclamation point with a cannon and then more people blow it up with 4 times the TNT that they thought they were using.
And then the hand.
You burn down the Warthog Hotel, you've solved every issue.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
nobody's even in there that I know of.
See, you would be the leader, Matt, that they needed.
No, I think actually thinking about it more, I think I would be that kid who stumbled into the Warthog Hotel because I was just like, things are getting really hairy here. I'm gonna hop over. I'm gonna hop over into this hotel. Oh God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're doing some murders.
They got the bodies strung up in here.
This is something
the old dusty trail.
when I think apocalypse scenarios, I always do have to like humble the self that says like you'd make it. I'm always like, no, you probably wouldn't.
This is my exercise in keeping myself humble. Is I'm like, zombie apocalypse, it's over. I'm cooked.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if the big quake hits, I'm like, how many pills can I swallow before I drown to death?
Before I drown it, you can use the water that you're drowning in to swallow the pills. There you go. It's double,
perfect.
double effect.
Exactly. My solution is rooted in that as well. Whereas, like, I can't wait for this to go on for 5 weeks. I need to get people here now, or I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Or just never be found. Could go either way.
I love the questions, Eb. That was a fun one to start off of. And speaking of kind of sticking with this theme that we've continued through of human character, human condition. I love that you also disagree with Lord of the Flies like me, Matt. It seems like dangerous. This is a hopefully not too abstract of a question. I'm going to ask it to you first, Matt. In both books and movies, it seems like dangerous territory to walk into, commenting on like the human. I mean, that's what all story kind of does, but okay. How do I phrase this? It seems like it'd be almost harder to get audience buy-in making a story that's less defaming of the human character. Like we almost gravitate more towards ones that are negative, but I might be wrong there. And it seems like dangerous on both sides to either say like lift up the anthropology, like the human character, but also to tear it down too much. From a like creator's perspective, what do you think? That where does that fit in story? Either like misanthropy or the opposite of it?
Well, I think we exist in a world where people do want really simple answers to really complicated questions. And I think, to me, I guess in my mind, the most interesting stories are ones that try to grapple with both ends of that and kind of try to reckon with the fact that, like, people are not just good and evil. People are people. We're animals. We are both capable of great good and capable of great evil. And it could vary day to day by the same person. And I think that is a huge problem I have with Lord of the Flies, is they're like, well, these boys left to their own devices with no reason have turned to being monsters. And I'm like, maybe some of them, maybe a few of all of them. I don't know about that. So I think that there just is a gray area that I wish that more pieces of literature and art tried to operate in.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on the last chapter where they are interviewing Brock, because I think he said something really poignant, which was, "No one tried to stop me. Anybody, all at once, could have stopped me." I'd love to, because like with what you just said, I think that tracks. You know, like it's a gray area. Yeah. He was a very powerful leader, but yeah, enough people could have stopped him.
Well, and he's also, again, there's that kind of amazing chapter before you find out what he's done, where he's like giving up his seat on the bus to or like helping somebody get in the bus. And because there is that chapter that I think is really interesting, where they're in the tunnels and the SATCOM goes down, and there is that guy who is a leader figure who's trying to like calm things down, and then just through this anarchy gets like trampled to death. And I think Brock's really interesting because he's also like, I don't think he says it to in that last Brock interviewed chapter, but like there are pirates that are interviewed that are like, he was taking care of us, like he was trying to take care of us. And I think it was him maybe with a misunderstanding or a misconception of the human condition in his own brain, like trying to be a leader figure and trying to keep his people safe.
It reminded me of I don't know, how many of you have seen Band of Brothers? No, okay. There's a scene in Band of Brothers. There's a couple scenes in Band of Brothers. There's a character in Band of Brothers, and all these people are based off real people. And I know it's been criticized as making this person look worse than he was, but he has this view on war that's very akin to Tecumseh Sherman in the Civil War, who said famously, "War is hell. If you try and make it anything else, it just lasts longer." And this like colonel, I think he's a colonel, he has this kind of the sections with Brock reminded me of that, where he's just like killing Germans. He doesn't care who they are. Like even when he learns like one of them is actually from America and came back to like help the motherland, just kills him in cold blood. Spears, yeah. And there's a scene where he talks to one of the soldiers and he basically is like, "You're not accepting the fact that you're already dead." like we're just here to die and you're already dead, and like figure that out and this will be easy. It'll just be easy to do this thing. So I think you're right, Matt, that like the way we think about a situation can change how we like handle it. And I think Fantasticland is showing that. But before we go deeper into that, Jeremy, I want to hear your opinion on I don't know, what do you think about the whole misanthropy thing?
Well, I think this book does, like, to its credit, a pretty good job of making everything seem justifiable. Everybody you talk to is the protagonist of their own stretch of the story, and I think that's an important thing when you're talking about people and trying to portray them as such, where something like Lord of the Flies is just like, yes, they all suck because deep down we all suck. Now, sure, I don't appreciate some of the like earlier stretches of the book where there's like this sort of myopic view of what the young people at the time were like, and being one of those people in that age group of what at the time the book came out would have been doing that. I'm like, well, no, we're not like that. We're not going to do this weird cargo cult selfie contest with boxes of candy. That's stupid. That is actually stupid. We'll play all the card games we know and then try to find a way to get drunk. Thank you, and you're welcome. But, like, I don't know. I think there's a lot going on. I did thoroughly enjoy, like, finally getting to hear from Brock and, like, setting aside the more bananas shit that happens in this book, like, the characters are absolutely incredible, well thought out. Now, they don't always make, like, references that make sense for that character to make. Like, occasionally, somebody's just going to reference Stephen King. I'm like, this 18-year-old girl, probably not. Look,
I mean, one of the most famous authors in American history, so
sure.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, well, whatever.
Yeah.
It just feels weird.
Fair.
And but I think as like a reflection on humanity, it's kind of there, but then also undercut by like the crazy shit and the things that make me just not believe anything that's happening.
Speaking of Stephen King, is that do I see Church right there? Is that Winston Churchill from Pet Cemetery? The cat.
Yeah, you do.
Come on, guys.
There he is.
The scariest Stephen King book, in my opinion. And yet they have not figured out how to make a movie of it. And I don't think they ever will.
Haven't. I think the nature of Pet Cemetery makes it too alarming for them to make a faithful adaptation of, because it's so much of that man being like, I kind of hate my kids and I hate my life and I don't know why I'm here.
I don't know why I'm here. Yeah. I also think that the nature, how he describes things, like the scene when he references the Wendigo and he's walking through the woods and he's like going to the cemetery. King's descriptions of that scene on screen are just like a shadow creeping behind a person. And you're like, oh yeah, that doesn't even come close to the pure dread that was in my mind as I was reading this like guy walking through the woods. Kind of in that vein, a little bit of a segue. My next question is about another thing you mentioned in the debate, Matt, explaining the beginning of a thing. Because I like that you said that this book does a better job than Lord of the Flies of like setting up the possibilities within the scenario. But it does two things. And I want to ask this as creatives again. There's this idea that you have to like jump into the middle of the action, but also your audience in both book and movie form needs enough background to understand what's going on. And I think this book does it well of balancing, like, yes, we do jump into these interviews and the people are talking about something that like they just assume everybody knows about. So we get that as like the in the middle of things, but it also builds up our like lore of Fantasticland with the interviewer asking the questions that kind of lead them to explain what happened. So yeah, I guess that's my question of like, how important do you think that aspect of jumping in the middle of things is? How important do you think it is to give an audience enough reference point? Because there's a lot of movies, especially movies out there, that I think seem to like purposely confuse people as like as a way to entertain. So yeah, where do you balance the importance of those two things, Matt?
I think that I don't think you always have to start in the middle of the action, but I think that this book does such a specifically good job because it drops you in and it tells you the aftermath. It tells you what they found, and it kind of hints that everyone knows the details of how they got there, but through that they managed to give you the exposition of what happened while still holding you in this state of being like, okay, well, what the fuck happened? Like, what's the turning point here? Like, what? I can sense things getting worse. And then sometimes people will jump past the inciting incident of when things got worse, and you're like, okay, what the fuck? Like, how did we get here? So I think it's always a tightrope walk of like leading your audience to the path while still keeping them informed that there's something at the end that's going to be like worthy of the journey for them.
Yeah.
Because I think go ahead, please.
No, it's a follow-up question because I think this is something you did really well in Chicken Boy we both don't, I mean, it's a short film, so there's only so much lead up you could have done, but I think like we don't immediately get the like Chicken Boy incident. You lead up to that, but what we do get is we're immediately thrust into the personality of the primary character, who's like someone who is lonely. From like frame one, I'm like, yeah, that guy's lonely. Like, yeah, he's looking for companionship. And so I think that's my follow-up question is like, how much do you think the jumping into the middle, has to do with pre-established character and not having to build everyone with like a origin story.
I think it. Trying to think of how to phrase this. I feel like it varies person to person. What's most important to me is that I understand, and this is true as an audience member as well, is like, I just want to understand like what a person wants and where they're coming from. I don't need to know their life story. I just need to I need to know what the issue is, and I need to know what they're doing to try to solve it. So you just want that motivation to be like, okay, how do we fix what the issue is here with this person? There's a really good it's like a fucking interview that like I think one of the South Park guys, Matt Stone or Trey Parker, did like a speech at like a screenwriting program at a university, and he was like, if I want you to take the bullet points of your script, like the plot points of your script, and write them out just like sentence by sentence. And if every sentence starts with "and then," you're in trouble. Well, you need every sentence to either start with "therefore" or like end with like "because of." Like the things have to feed together to, I think, especially for you to understand these characters' journeys, where we've all watched movies, I feel like, where we're like, what the fuck is this person doing? What do you do? Why would you do that? Why on God's green earth would you opt to do that right now?
Mortal Kombat 2.
Nah, my boy Carl Urban, I bet that makes very little sense.
Yeah. But no, I think you're right. Yeah. Zeb, you look like you have something to say.
No, I'm enjoying this. But I did see that exact same interview with the South Park people, and I thought it was fascinating because I hadn't really approached stories like that, or even consuming it myself had approached, reviewing it in that same way either. But then all of a sudden you would see things where it was very clear that it wasn't a therefore. It was more like, but at the same time.
Yeah.
Jeremy?
Well, yeah, and I think that is like a really crucial part to telling like a story that makes sense, Like, I mean, Travis was talking about the in media res thing, and like that can be a way to do something, but if you're not careful, that's just going to like really confuse people and just have them disoriented as they try to piece together the story you were supposed to be telling in the first place. And really, I think having this book in particular start in the middle of the action would have been just a huge detriment to the book, which is, a really compelling read. And I think one of the things, one of the brilliant things that this book did was to have everybody just talk in the early chapters about things just after the fact, and just sort of subtly hinting that shit had already hit the fan, and just trying to explore why and what led to it. I think it fumbled in a lot of ways, but like the storytelling does kind of follow this, like, well, this, therefore this, and so on, and you would think this, but this, and I think if it stuck the landing, I'd have been more happy, but I don't know. But yeah, I think there's this logical flow that needs to be there.
I think you're right too about that, and this kind of feeds into another question of like, the setting and the I would call it front and center image, because I do think this book does an excellent job of early. It introduces the fallen exclamation point, and the hanging people, and the headless body. And like from chapter 1, you're like, how the hell did that happen? Like, it's a horrifying image, and you want to know, and it teases you the whole time until it reveals like the events that led to that. But yeah, I think my question would be, how important is, not how important, because I think everyone would agree that it's incredibly important, but when you're approaching creating a story, either for film or books, or even consuming one as an audience member, like that setting and the image that sticks in your mind, are those things that are front and center when you work? Matt first.
So a friend of mine who's a screenwriter gave me a really good piece of advice when I was writing one of my first feature scripts, and I kind of work in like the genre sphere of things. And he was like, look, you're not going to be able to, like, you can't go nuts in page 25. Like, you just can't do it. You don't have the budget to go nuts in page 25. And then you have no ramp up. You have nowhere to go. You've gone nuts too early. But he was like, basically, you need something right at the beginning. The first thing that happens should be something that hooks the audience. You need that thing. It's the question mark. It's like, you need just something where you're like, oh, fuck. Like, okay, something's coming. And then, like, it's like you can go nuts at like page 50, but every like 15 pages, you have to drop a little nugget. You have to be like, don't worry, we haven't forgotten about that shit we showed you in the first minute. So I think it's a really effective art of figuring out how to like breadcrumb things to just keep, you just want to keep your claws in somebody. You don't, like, we've all had that moment too where we're watching a movie or we're reading a book and we're just like, you hit that point where you're like, okay, where is this going? Okay, like I'm like let out a deep sigh. You're like, how do I avoid that deep sigh? And I think it's just that effective little dropping little nuggets until you're like, it's gonna happen.
Did we talk about Paul Tremblay's horror movie? Was that with you?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it did the same thing too, with the like introduction of the like character in the future and talking about, oh, all these things happened, and you're like, what happened? Like, I have to know, like, what are the terrible things that happened on this movie set? So that was fascinating that that's a connection there. But
what's really interesting, really quick, is this idea of dropping breadcrumbs extends well beyond the creative space and even into the academic space. I can tell you firsthand, as I'm going through sections of my writing, I have to keep reintroducing, hey, in case you forgot 20 pages ago, this is the focus of the study. Please don't get bogged down in the copious amounts of dry ass details I have to give you as part of this. Just remember, it gets cool in like 20 more pages.
Yep.
Yeah, I think people will like, those are the most boring nonfiction books. Is like, I think people, to go on a little bit of a rant tangent here, I think people, because I read a lot more nonfiction than I used to, because I teach history now, but people tend to think of history books as like, just give me the facts. Just give me the facts of the things that happened. It's like, no, you have to make a narrative. You have to have a point of the story you're telling. One of my favorite examples is SPQR by Mary Beard. She wrote it's a history of ancient Rome, and her whole thing was like, I'm going to tell you about like the culture of ancient Rome, and I'm going to do that through archaeological evidence and specific people who wrote. So like Cicero and some other like Caesars and such. So she has this overarching narrative of like, I'm trying to tell you what the people of Rome were like. And that's what this book is. and so the whole time you have this through line, and she keep, like you said, Zeb, you know, you'll get bogged down in some details. And then every 10th page, she'll be like, remember, I'm telling you all of this to remind you that it proves what I'm saying about what the people were like. And so you're like, oh yeah, that's what we're talking about. Not Rome as an empire, but like, what were Roman people like? How did they live? And I think you're 100% right. That has to be present in nonfiction and fiction, where it's like, I have a narrative, there's emotion to this story that's moving us through, even if it is true fact stuff. But yeah. Jeremy. Oh, go ahead, Zeb. Go ahead, Zeb, real quick.
I was just gonna add on to that. The most recent example that I have that can support what you said, even about history, is there was a Netflix series called Death by Lightning or something. It was about the assassination of President Garfield. Well, I read the book prior to the series, and it's called Destiny of the Republic, but the exact same thing exists. It has a through line of like, it keeps reintroducing this one guy, and you're like, who is this one guy? And it's like, overall, the whole story is about President Garfield, which is like, yeah, you know, of all the presidents, not one that you'd normally like pick up a book about, but fascinating narrative, because he kept dropping those breadcrumbs of like, who's this guy that we keep introducing? What does he have to do? Why did he buy a gun?
What was he gonna do with it?
Wait a minute.
Jeremy?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I think this is one of the things about this book specifically that both like had me and ended up losing me at a number of points, because like there is, to me anyway, this feeling of like overlapping accounts and things kind of adding up, and sort of feel like you feel this build to something as you go through the book, and it just kind of, you know, fizzles out. And like some things that I did like, some things about like the whole sort of breadcrumb structure and leading people through, like we talked about before, like the guy at the beginning who calms down the screaming kids and helps that family get out of the park and onto the bus, seems like it was probably Brock Hockney. The book never says it. It just feels like that's probably who that was. And I feel like that is an excellent inclusion. And then you have the kids singing the song, and then you have a bunch of murderers also singing the song later. It's cool. I like that. It led somewhere. Then there's like these sprinkling breadcrumbs about, say, the warthogs. You hear about them in some people's stories, but then not other people's stories. And then turns out their whole deal is just they're terrorizing one guy. That's what they did after they left the park, and that just kind of went nowhere. You know, there's things like that, and I know real life does have things that kind of go nowhere, because life is not a story and random other things happen. I don't know. Oh no.
That leads to two questions. First being, I want to know what everyone else thought of this ending. I guess I just want to know that, because Jeremy's saying it kind of fizzled out. He's not satisfied with it. Matt and Zeb, Matt first, what do you think? How did you like the ending of Fantasticland?
I feel like I'm pro the ending, because it just really seats in that thing of like, if I was this journalist specifically and I was doing these accounts to be like, how did this happen? I would be like, I think I would end in the same place. And the book left me in the same place where I'm like, it's easier than you would think for people to end up in this situation. And it can just truly be like just the exact wrong 3 things happen, and it just like puts everybody in a state that they wouldn't normally be in. And I think I like the ending of the book because it's the culmination of what I like about the book in general, is just this thing of like, we don't have the easy answers for you. They don't exist. We can't solve this for you. It's just some unfortunate part of just the exact wrong circumstances in human nature. And I can't look at it and be like, well, that's crazy and I wouldn't do that, because sometimes you just get swept up in this shit.
Mm-hmm. Deb?
Yeah, I enjoyed the ending. I didn't really have any like reservations on whether or not I expected resolution. I think because I'm so trained on books that end on, and this is how it all broke down. I think ending the book with the Brock interview really sold it for me, because he was so hyped up as the center figure of everything bad. He himself was the flashpoint. And so to end on a note with him, explaining himself and going back and forth with the journalist, and you almost get a sense of empathy for the guy, almost as if, if I was big and buff and decided to put somebody out of my misery, I may have ended up a Brock myself. And I think that was a really cool way to tie everything back together. And then to immediately, like, the juxtaposition of going to interview that young girl, and then both the journalist and the girl are crying, I think was like a good black and white contrast of the 2 different sides of the story, and like how things could have turned out depending on where your head was at the time of this crisis,
Now, I'm not saying that that an ambiguous ending can't work. It does, and it does often. And yeah, a lot of the story does kind of center around like this whole thing of like, well, there's no easy answers here. These people were put into a tough situation. It's just, and I'm gonna go back to the breadcrumbs for a little bit, because there's this interesting through line that happens in a lot of the interviews where somebody says, oh, if I ever meet the person who decided such and such a thing, it's not going to be a pleasant experience, whatever. Like, the one part where it's different is the parents who's talking about, I assume Brock Hockney is like, if I ever meet that guy, I'm going to give him like a hug or something, which was very interesting. But so much felt like it was leading up to like an actual answer, like some kind of overarching like conspiracy of corporate malevolence, some kind of just crazy death game thing that like a lack of answers when there are like questions worth asking, especially from a journalistic standpoint of being like, we need to find out what happened, and then just not. Like, it just kind of... The book was over because the author said it was, and he stopped writing. So that's just kind of what it feels like.
I think with that... Go ahead, Zeb.
I think the corporate people got off scot-free, like, in terms of this book. Like, arguably the worst answer from a corporate level would have been just not malevolence, but just sheer incompetence. Like,
yeah.
I also don't explore that either.
On the like personal, the personal interviewees level. I mean, the first time I heard that reference of like, if I ever meet that guy, I think again it was in like chapter 4, with the manager guy who was like, if I meet the guy who sent the buses in, it's gonna be a bad guy. My immediate thought was like, no, it won't. Like we talk that game. We all do. We all say like, yeah, if I could like meet that guy, I'm gonna take. And then we meet the guy and we're like, hey, how's it going? We give him a handshake and like maybe be a little two-faced, unfortunately. I mean, I hope that we have situations where we don't, but I think that is a human thing that Bocovan pointed to, of like when we have an opportunity where we're not actually staring the ones we're accusing in the face. Oftentimes we're going to say a thing like that of like, yeah, I would confront him. I would do that. And I liked how he pointed that out. But
well, there is that, but there's also that thing of like, because it's a story, that repeated inclusion of that tends to stick in the minds of readers, people experiencing the story, that is something important. Like,
well,
if
I think
you're
this
telling a
goes
story and you repeat something, it should be important.
I think this goes to another follow-up question I had, though, from what we've talked about of, we have like 2 layers of unreliable narrator here. And how is that working in this story? I'd love to hear from Matt, especially as the guest, and all y'all of like, it's an interviewer who has his own bent to how he wants to tell this. So that's an unreliable narrator. And in a sense of like, he has a bias, he has a narrative. And then we have everyone he interviews, and all of them have a way they want to tell this story. And so that like creates interesting dynamics. And I guess, how do you think Bocovan balanced it? And that seems like a hard thing to wrestle with story-wise.
Yeah, I think that's something that I find so engaging about the book is you're dealing with all these different personalities of people that feel like real, like separate people. And you do feel like, I think that's one thing that's so cool and that locks you in so much to the beginning of the book, is even when they're talking about like the way that the park is laid out and everything, there's just this air of them being like, oh my God. But it's also this thing of like, there's a lot of this. So I have this joke that I make because things will happen on set. Things will get damaged. And I'm like, men love to come assess the damage. Like we all walk over and all of us in like groups of 3 will come over and exactly the hands go on the shoulder. We're looking up and we're like, oh yeah, that's damaged. So I just feel like it's this like everyone trying to fix it, or everyone trying to be like, okay, like, well, if it was my thing, I would come in there. And it's like, I just think the detail of the different personalities of all of the people being interviewed is really cool. And it's something that was being discussed before we went live, of the fact that there's like timeline discrepancies, which I feel like is intentional because different people in different circumstances like remember the timing of it differently.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just think it's really cool. And I think it's really well handled. And I think it helps, I guess, kind of make the point that there is no point. And we're just like consuming this information through others.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it's part of what makes it so interesting to me.
Jeb?
Yeah, the moment I started reading, I was expecting a consistent narrative. But then when probably 2 or 3 chapters in, when I started noticing the inconsistencies, that's when my interest really was piqued as to this unreliable narrator, because I was looking at the story, where it was going, and then all of a sudden somebody threw a wrench in on the timeline. or somebody threw a wrench in on who actually did some of the murdering. There was reference to a guy getting his hands cut off. Never got mentioned again until like the last chapter when Brock said, no, I didn't cut his hands off. And it was those inconsistencies that made me want to keep digging and digging and digging. Because then I, as a reader, kind of like the hands on the hips, I felt I need to figure this out. This is my story now. I need to figure out who did it first.
Jeremy?
Well, it's... I mean, like, the timeline inconsistencies are whatever. To me, the things that tend to matter in this story, and like a story like this, where it's all that sort of Rashomon, this is what happened from everybody's perspective, is where the overlap is. Like, and sure, I want to try and piece things together, but the things that I'm trying to piece together based on what the book is saying, the book itself is not trying to piece together in any way, turns out. And that just, it's not satisfying to just be like, hey, these are some things and you should care about them. And I'm like, okay, well, I do. And like, well, sucks to be you, doesn't it?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk about that for a very long time, but I would have one more question, the pretentious question of the week. I hinted at it earlier, and I want to preface this by saying none of us, I don't think, are trained psychologists, but I think this book opens up a good question about, so they're constantly referred to as kids, okay? And some people would say, hey, 18 to 25-year-olds are adults. Well, there's a whole phenomenon that has been referenced in a lot of articles called extended adolescence, where the modern 18 to 20-year-old is actually more akin to the, 80s 16 to 18-year-old. And I would like to hear y'all's thoughts in reference to this novel of like, do you think I just lost the author's name. I've said it like 6 times today. Bocovan? Yes. Do you think he was intentionally doing that with the kids thing, leaning into this psychological idea that the like child, the teenage stage has actually extended into what used to be considered adulthood? Or do you think he just called them kids because another reason? Matt, what do you think?
I don't think that was intentional. I would be curious to do more research about extended adolescence, because I feel like sometimes there's a lot of things nowadays that we state as being different from before, but we are just also inundated with so much more person-to-person information than we were in the 80s, where I'm like, okay, is that true? That we've regressed in our development? Is that true? Or is it just that in the 80s we would be like, you're 18, best of luck out there, and just fucking slap a kid on the ass and send him out the door? Be like, we'll check back in with you when you're 35. Like, I'm like,
yeah.
But I feel like the intention of calling them kids kind of varies person to person, because it's kind of like, when it's these adults who weren't involved in the situation, it's this thing of like, this is so especially unspeakable because these are children. But it's also a lot of the people that you follow through these stories are like resilient and intelligent and like quick thinking. And then I feel like there is that thing when the kids are talking about it and describing themselves as kids of like, I have had enough separation from this that I need to like find a way to forgive myself or remove some of this guilt. But I don't think there was a thought process on extended adolescence because of how resilient and intelligent I think a lot of the teens in the park are written as in terms of their actions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think any of them are treated like they're acting like children after a certain point.
I like that, and I want to give context before I know Zeb and Jeremy jump in. I agree with you, Matt, that some of these things I think can just be looking at the past with rose-colored glasses, which isn't how you put it, but we do that often. The two things that have stuck out with me in the research I've done of this extended adolescence thing are a focus on how much for like our generation, millennials, undergrad was pushed. Like you have to go to college. That a lot of people theorize that undergrad became basically an extension of high school. Like, oh, you're not independent yet. You're just doing this like slightly more independent version of the thing you just did. And the other one I lost. It flew right out of my brain. but it was there and it might come back. But before
happens
it comes
to me 40 times a day.
Yep. Jeremy, what do you think about the extended adolescence question?
Well, extended adolescence, I think I would have to kind of confer with at least one of the things that Matt was saying, where like, yeah, we probably just it puts me in the same mindset as to like how there are more like diagnoses of neurological disorders like ADHD, autism, whatever, than there were when those things first came about. Mostly, like, not necessarily because more people like are experiencing this at like a higher rate, like a higher percentage of people have these things. It's probably just a thing where like we now have a capacity to sort of observe this and understand it and put it under a microscope in a way that, say, in the 80s, we just weren't doing, and because we weren't doing it, didn't have the capability to even like form that kind of thesis. Now, when we're talking about it in terms of this book, there could be something there as to like the author like saying like, yes, the human brain doesn't finish developing until you're like 25 or something, and so therefore these young people in this situation are realistically children. But even more realistically, I think the author wanted the comparison to Lord of the Flies to happen. It's an easy sell, Lord of the Flies at Disneyland, and you've got it right there. And I think, in this book, it is kind of overdone. Like, he talks about like these young adults who are adults being like, oh, they've never left home before. They don't know how to take care of themselves. But like, if you are, say, whenever you were 25, I don't know how it was for you. For me, that was me living by myself and having a steady job for years to pay bills, the same as I'm doing right now, almost a decade later.
Yeah.
Right? So like, it just seems to me like a sort of half thought through story justification for things going as badly as they can possibly be in an already pretty unrealistic survival scenario.
Zeb?
I think you guys are overthinking this. There's a much simpler, so much simpler of an explanation. The author, the journalist, is just clearly much older than these people, and is just simply referring to them as kids. Like, yeah, if you're 47 and they're all 18, they're kids to you, right? Like, you ever been called baby by like an old grizzled diner waitress? You're like, yes, I am a wee little guy.
I am child.
I'm but a boy. Yeah.
Please give me pancakes. I think that's that's my take. This is just a really old journalist who's calling them kids, is young boys.
It's like editing the interviews so that they're calling themselves kids also.
100%. Creative liberty.
Possibly creative liberty.
True dedication.
Well, thank you everybody for answering all of the questions and having a great discussion. I could talk about this book for longer, but I think it's time to rate this thing. Here on Fermented Fiction, we have an entirely arbitrary rating system that makes zero sense to anybody, but it's fun, I hope. And that is, how many drinks do you need to fully enjoy Fantasticland by Mike Bocovan? So, Zebediah, I almost called it Adventureland, which is the movie starring Kristen Stewart, and who's the male lead?
Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg. I remember liking it, but it's been a while. Anyway, Fantasticland by Mike Bocovan. How many drinks does it take to enjoy this to its fullest? Zeb, you're in the corner, so I'm going to say you're first.
Sweet. For a book like this, and just to get really in the spirit of things, I'm going to recommend you are going to drink a drink that I have always liked. It's called a Salty Dog. It's vodka, grapefruit juice with a salt rim, just in honor of that hurricane. And I think you need probably two, three of them guys, and you're pretty well set.
I like it. Jeremy?
Now, first of all, you're going to want to have one for each of the chapters. So that's right off the bat, we're starting with 23. And look, it'll
23
help kind of
sips, 23 full drinks.
Full entire drinks, one per chapter. Get with the program, Travis.
All right.
Now look, but that's not all. That's starting point. That's point A, right? We're gonna get to point B, which is if you ever have a question about, like, would this actually reasonably happen, you just slug a full shot, and put that out of your head, so that by the time you reach the end, and it's after the last interview and the author is trying to sum up what he learned today, that way you're in the perfect, pretty blitzed state of mind to just kind of not worry about the fact that things just kind of got left, and it feels like as deep and profound in its nothingness as the author intended. Full, pure enjoyment. 45 drinks.
45 drinks, that's a lot. I'm going to say, I don't know how many, but all I know is because of the pirates, it's got to be rum. And you got to drink enough to do what happened on my 21st birthday, which is why I don't drink rum anymore. You got to drink enough to puke it out your nose, and then you'll never drink rum again in your life, which I haven't touched it since that moment, because rum out of your nostrils sucks. So that's my rating system, is drink enough rum in this book to puke it out your nose. That's hard mode. Easy mode is don't drink, because there's a lot of death and you might get depressed, and I don't want that to happen to you. So Matt.
Okay. This has raised a lot of questions, but I'm gonna withhold those questions. Actually, Jeremy, is your liver okay?
Is any part of me okay?
Heard. Understood. I'm going to say, realistically, my feeling is that you need 0 drinks to enjoy Fantasticland. It's enjoyable purely on its own. But 2 drinks really lock in there, zone in, get in the pocket.
Mhm.
That's the move.
Right.
Yeah. Also, Travis, one time I was at this party and they wanted to do shots and all they had was gin.
Oof.
Oh,
and I
boy.
was taking a shot of gin and my partner next to me was going to take her shot and looked down and she was like, just so nonchalantly, like, there's a fly in my cup. And I laughed so hard that I shot gin out of my nose.
Oh, pine needle out your nose. Ah,
Horrible.
gross. Horrible.
Nightmarish.
It's just the least shootable.
Yes.
Spirit.
Agreed.
God.
1,000% the worst.
God, why?
Yep. Bad. I like it. I like your rating, Matt. And while you're there on the main screen, can you tell us who you are one more time, where to find your stuff, and anything else the audience needs to know about you?
Yeah. My name is Matthew Rush. I'm a Seattle filmmaker. I'm on Instagram at RushM15. My production company is on Instagram at RushJob Productions. We make weird shit. A lot of it's not available online. If you want to see Chicken Boy, DM me on Instagram and I will determine if you're enough of a sicko that you're worthy.
I would highly recommend, if you are enough of a sicko, to DM him, because Chicken Boy is fucking crazily awesome. I loved it. It is a bonkers movie, and I loved it. Every minute of it. High production value for a short film. You did great, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We had another guest here, Zebediah Booth, our pinch hitter from Meathead Media. Please head over to our Substack and read our articles. Zeb's are amazing, mine are okay, and our friend Kent's are fantastic as well. We have a couple themes there. We have Aristotelian Sniff Test, we have Only the Good, and then we have our general movie reviews that we have a theme for every month. Matt, check out his stuff, any you can find, and if you're a sicko, DM him for Chicken Boy. Highly recommend it. And Jeremy and I will just be here directing you towards all these awesome creative things until Jeremy writes his book, and then I'll pitch that thing.
Yeah, just pitch it
nonstop.
It'll be great.
Well, so.
Pitch it now. You can do it. I believe in you.
Well, it's not done yet, so
That's fine.
Thank you again. Love y'all. Same Stooges as always. Goodbye.